Welcome, ladies and gents, my name is Curci, and wow, just wow. That's the only word that comes to my head when I think of Tales from the Borderlands, which I am convinced is the greatest thing that Telltale Games has ever put out. Even better than the first season of The Walking Dead, even better than The Wolf Among Us. No, Tales from the Borderlands stands above both of them. It's just so good. They understand the source material so well. The source material, by the way, is the popular video game series Borderlands. This is a video game series that I personally have played before, but just couldn't get into. I never finished Borderlands 1 or 2. I have played both, I just never finished them. It's just that the game that is there, the game that people really like, just doesn't appeal to me. Basically, the game is that you run around, you kill creatures, you get like a bazillion guns, just different combinations of types of guns that you could get. They all have different names. It's just, that's one of the, big marketing points of the game, is that there's a crap zillion guns or whatever they say. But you run around, you kill monsters, you get loot, you complete quests, you get loot. Grindy-ish kind of game. It's not really for me. That being said, it is got a lot of great characters. There is good writing in there. They just don't put the focus of story in there. They just create a game, they create an environment, and they allow you to go around and play in it. But it is a very tongue-in-cheek kind of game. It is very comical. It's very funny in a lot of ways. And then there's also this cel-shady kind of art style to it. Tales from the Borderlands just shows that they can take that game, that whole idea of that world of Borderlands, of the world of Pandora, and they can create a very cohesive story within that, filled with great characters that you love, characters that you hate, and also keeping your interest, but also not losing sight of what makes Borderlands Borderlands. All of it in this game. It's great. So you start the game as a character named Reese. He works for this company known as Hyperion. Hyperion is this company that floats in this space station above Pandora, which is this alien planet, but they basically go down to Pandora and they make a profit off of the ancient artifacts or the different kinds of weapons that you can find on the planet. And in so doing, they actually screw over a lot of the people that live there. They make life for the people of Pandora very difficult. So Reese works for them. He works for Hyperion, and basically in true Hyperion fashion, he gets screwed over by his co-worker. And in an attempt to get back at his co-worker, he decides to team up with his best buddy Vaughn to screw him over. A lot of that going on in the Hyperion, that just happens. So they go down to Pandora and they cross paths with the other playable character, Fiona, who is a con artist, along with her sister, Sasha. And then events take place and they basically go off trying to find a vault at some point. That's not necessarily a spoiler, you find that out in the first episode, but there's a lot of things that happen, a lot of more things that go beyond just being able to find a vault. That's actually one of the things that they mention in the game itself, where they say, oh, we're gonna go find a vault, and oh, that's surprising, and then somebody goes yeah, it's not that surprising, everything on Pandora leads you to a vault. It's like a little zing that they put in there just to kind of make the game sort of self-aware of itself. But there's a lot of that in this game. It is a very just laugh out loud funny game, but it's so perfectly timed. It's the timing and the delivery, the voice acting in this game is great. They bring those characters to life, but the comedy and the jokes, they all land, and they land perfectly. But just because the game puts out a lot of jokes and it is very funny doesn't mean that it doesn't know when to pull it back in and be serious. This is a Telltale game. It is going to be emotional. It's going to hit you right in your emotional gut, and it does that. You would be laughing 1 second and then turn around and be on the verge of tears. I am going to admit that the verge of tears kind of thing didn't happen very often, but when it did have a lot of emotional impact. That doesn't mean that each of the 5 episodes are bad. It just means that emotional impact that you're looking for, it comes. It just doesn't happen as often as, say, in something like The Walking Dead. As with all Telltale games, this is an episodic series. There are a total of 5 episodes. When I first discovered Telltale, when I first decided to go into the first season of The Walking Dead, I started playing it after the entire season was out, so I just played it back to back to back to back to back. But after falling in love with that game, I couldn't wait to play The Walking Dead Season 2 and The Wolf Among Us, the 2 new games that they were going to come out with, and they were coming out around the same time. So when they did come out, I played each episode as they released, which was a mistake that I found out, because in a lot of ways, episode 1 to episode 2, there was a big gap of time in between. It could be weeks, it could be months. So you would often forget what would happen in the previous episode, and then by playing this next episode, you would have to be oh yeah, that's right, that's what happened. I just feel like there's a little bit of a disconnect there as far as how you should be experiencing the game. So when Tales from the Borderlands came out, I decided not to do that. I decided to purposely wait until the entire game was out, all 5 of the episodes, and then I played them back to back to back to back to back. And I think that in and of itself is a much more enjoyable experience. But as I said before, I love the characters in this game. I fell in love with Fiona. I thought Fiona was one of the great characters of this game. She was just really likable, but she was also learning how to be capable herself. She's a con artist. She cons people out. She scams people. But as far as getting aggressive and being in really dangerous situations, she's not so experienced, but as the game progresses, you see her become more and more experienced. There's character development with Fiona. But I also loved her sister Sasha. Sasha, again, was also another con artist. She was a person that scams people, just like Fiona. But she is just slightly more capable when it comes to aggressive situations, where if a fight breaks out, she's going to be the person you want to stand behind. There's Reese's buddy, Vaughn. Vaughn is just a really likable, very gullible, very naive kind of character. He's an accountant. He doesn't belong on this planet, just like Reese. He doesn't belong on this planet. This is a very savage world of Pandora. It's a world that's always trying to kill you, which happens a lot in video games. Between the really dangerous creatures, the environmental hazards, and the psychos and the raiders, all these people are trying to kill you, and they're trying to take your stuff, because that's all they care about. All they care about is loot, which is something that translates really well from the original source material into this game. Because in the game of Borderlands, you'll say, oh wow, this is a really sick gun, and they actually translate that into this game, where they'll find a gun, and one of the characters will be like, this is like the most rarest thing you could ever find. But going back to Reese, Reese is a guy that he's able to, even though he's out of his element, talk himself out of most situations. He's not a fighter. He doesn't have the ability to handle himself in aggressive situations like, say, Fiona or, say, Sasha. No, Reese has to use dialogue to get out of these dangerous situations, and dialogue, if you haven't realized by now, is something that Telltale really doubles down on. 90% of the things that you're going to be doing in games like Telltale games is talking. You're going to be sharing dialogue with other characters, gathering information, making hard-hitting decisions. If you're playing a Telltale game and expecting a really strong gameplay element, you're looking in the wrong place, because when you're not in conversation and you're not in a cutscene, you're going to be in a point-and-click game. There's really nothing there. And actually, Tales from the Borderlands really takes a step back when it comes to using a whole lot of the point-and-click thing. Because I did notice a lot that wasn't happening as often as, say, in the first season of The Walking Dead, or even in the second season of The Walking Dead. It just really did double down on the whole idea of sharing dialogue and conversations. It did, of course, happen, but it was something that I noticed happened a lot less than in previous games. But going back to the decision making, the decisions are just as hard-hitting as you would expect in a Telltale game. There are a lot in which you'll be frozen by indecision. You won't know, should I do this, should I do this? You're weighing the pros and cons, and then you can't wait for forever because the game will make a decision for you. But there is something that I didn't mention in my review for the game, and the reason why I didn't mention it is because it would have required a second playthrough in order to confirm that my suspicions were actually correct. And since I didn't want to play the game a second time, I decided that I was just going to leave it out of the review because I couldn't actually present it as a fact. And that being that I had the perception that maybe the game was giving you some sort of illusion of choice. For example, if you're saying, I want to drink that water bottle, and then it gives you the decision of saying yes or no, and then if you say no, I don't want to drink it, your character would do it anyway. So like one way or another, the game is going to get you to do the one thing that it needs you to do in order to move the plot forward. And I'm not going to tell you what the decisions are and what the choices you have to make are, but that's why I'm speaking very vague, talking about things you don't really have to make a decision about, because that would spoil the game. But I just got the whole perception of like, if I had chosen this one thing, why did it negate that decision and then the other thing happened anyway? It didn't happen a lot, but there were a lot of times in which it did happen, and then that just kind of pulled me out of the experience. Very slightly, very, very quickly pulled me out of the experience. But from what you expect from a Telltale game, it's all there. From the dialogue and the hard-hitting decisions to the emotional impact, it's there. From the gameplay being very point-and-click style to the action, having quick-time events, it's all there. And the other thing that's there are the technical issues. We have come to expect this from Telltale games, and I'm actually starting to get annoyed by this because, like, we have had so many games in which Telltale has released, and this is still a problem. It just, to me, makes me think that, okay, Telltale, you should have figured this out by now. The freeze framing, the drop in frame rates, the unsynced audio, it's getting annoying now. It's pulling me out of the situation. But to me, this is just something that Telltale should have fixed a while ago. Like, okay, yeah, The Wolf Among Us and The Walking Dead Season 2, it still had them. But I would have hoped that maybe it had less of it. It didn't. It had just the same amount. And even in this game, I feel like, if not the same, it's definitely more. Because there are some action sequences that do have a lot of things going on in them. And when things get too chaotic for the screen, the game freezes. And it's not even just a quick, like, 2-second freeze. Sometimes they would last, like, longer than 10 seconds. And there would be times where I'm sitting there and I'm like, did the game just freeze? Did it just crash? Do I have to restart my console? But no, eventually it would start playing again. But even still, it was like, this is a high action moment. This is a quick time event. And this is all awesome. But it's ruining the moment because of these technical issues that keep happening. But it's the same issue. It's the technical issues. It's the same art style, which again works for this game because that's what the original Borderlands art style was that whole cell shaded thing. But for something like Game of Thrones, for something like The Walking Dead, if you can make an effort to make the graphics a little bit more, Wouldn't you want to do that? Now, I normally wouldn't bring up the whole idea of graphics, as I've said multiple times that graphics don't really matter. They don't really affect my gameplay experience in general. Whether something looks realistic or if it doesn't, I don't really care. I mean, if it looks really good, I'll note it, or if it really works with the game, I'll note it like I did with this game. But if you were to turn around and say, oh yeah, the new Call of Duty game doesn't look as good as it probably should, it doesn't look so realistic, like, I don't care. As long as I had fun playing the game, then that's really all that matters. But the reason why I bring this up is because lately Telltale has been announcing new games that they're going to be working on. They just announced a new Batman game. We have this Marvel game that we got no new information about. I'm not even 100% sure if it's still happening. But they have Minecraft that's still running. They just finished Tales from the Borderlands and Game of Thrones. Plus we have The Walking Dead Season 3 that eventually has to come out. And maybe even another The Wolf Among Us. I just feel like they're putting their focus in the wrong place. I feel like they're putting a focus on quantity rather than quality. They need to sit down, they need to fix that engine. If they can up the graphics, let's do that. I think the most important thing is to deal with the technical issues. If you can make a Telltale game that has no technical hiccups, that's the game I'm looking for. But another thing that I would really like to see is maybe some sort of joint operation between Telltale and another game studio. Like, put Telltale in charge of the characters, the story, the role-playing decisions, the cutscenes, get some motion cap in there, let's up these graphics. Then we'll bring in the other game studio to worry about the stuff that's outside of the cutscenes, the fills in the gaps, the action sequences, the gameplay itself. Get rid of the point and click, get rid of the quick time events. We're going to put this foundation on there, and then Telltale's going to come in and put the icing on the cake. Now, at this point, anything that has Telltale written on it, I'm probably going to play because they have great storytelling elements. They're so good at it. But they are putting a focus on telling new stories. They don't really care about these technical issues that plague their game. Like, they should be concerned about that. They should want to fix those things. Create a new engine. Just start from scratch, and let's create a better game. Let's start evolving. Let's start improving. But that's just my little Telltale rant there. I went on a little bit longer than I wanted it to, but there it is. At the end of the day, Tales from the Borderlands is phenomenal. I love that game. It's going to be one of the best games I played this year. It is easily the best story-driven experiences of the year. It's a game that gets my seal of approval. It is a game that I recommend to everybody. Tales from the Borderlands, play it. If you haven't, if you played it already, play it again. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.